You've been in the realm of intelligence, Scott. I wanted your take on a very curious intelligence assessment. Here is let me just pull up the CNN report on it, that Russia has lost 87% of its troops that it had prior to the start of Ukraine's war, according to the intelligence assessment. And quickly, it just says that a staggering 87% of the total number of active duty ground troops that Russia had prior to launching the Ukraine war, and 2/3 of its pre-invasion tanks are gone. A source familiar with the declassified U.S. intelligence assessment to Congress told CNN. And then it said, still, despite heavy losses of men and equipment, Russian President Vladimir Putin is determined to push forward as the war approaches the 2-year anniversary next year. And U.S. officials are warning that Ukraine remains deeply vulnerable as the counteroffensive stagnated last fall, and officials believe Kiev is unlikely to make any gains in the future. So quite a contradictory statement there, Scott, from your experience on this, in this realm, and just your analysis of this. So what's your take on the latest intelligence assessment of the battlefield situation?
Well, we also need to add in that this Russian army that's been, decimated. Worse, I mean, it's worse than decimated. Decimated is just 1 in 10. I mean, this army's been annihilated. If you remember, is going to be pushing through Ukraine and onto Poland and the Baltics, and potentially causing World War III because they're so badass. Look, this is stupid in the extreme. Let's look at the timing of it. First of all, what are we talking about? We're talking about an intelligence report prepared for Congress. Why is Congress being briefed on this Russian, the state of the Russian military at this time? I mean, it's okay. Congress should be briefed all the time, but at this particular time, what's going on? What could the possible linkage be that would cause Congress to be briefed by the intelligence community? Oh, could it be that Congress is being asked by the President of the United States to authorize the release of $60 billion of U.S. taxpayer funds to further Ukraine's war effort against Russia? Now, at a time when the president is saying that, if we don't give this money to Ukraine, the Russians are going to go on to Poland and the Baltics and World War III. Your uncles, brothers, cousins, sisters, mothers are going to be fighting and dying if we don't let the Ukrainians fight and die for us. Many in Congress are questioning this. I mean, there's some in Congress have turned this into this issue of releasing money into a political football, basically saying, "Hey, Joe, if you want us to take care of Ukraine, you got to take care of America first. You got to release money and redo your policy on the border." So there's an element of politics there. But if you look at Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, and what he had to say too, it was interesting, because now the third most powerful person in America, number 3 in the line of succession to the presidency, has said that if you want this money, there's going to have to be some sort of oversight, meaning we want to know where it's going. We're not just going to give it to Ukraine anymore. We need to follow the money and make sure we know how it's spent, and who's getting it, etc. And he said, we also need the Ukrainians to give us a plan of action. Okay, so we give you this money. What are you going to do? What are you going to do that's different than what you've already done with the $115 billion we've already given you? And if you can't do that, I don't know why we should give you this money. And so one way to answer the question about what are you going to do with this money is the Biden administration's trying to make the argument that, and it's an argument you've heard others make very callously, this is the best investment you've ever had, guys. We're putting money into Ukrainians' hands, and they're killing Russians. They're killing a lot of Russians. So, and we don't have to. We're not losing any Americans. The Ukrainians are killing a lot of Russians. They're destroying a lot of Russian tanks. This is a great investment. I feel like I'm back in the Wild Wild West, and the snake oil salesman has shown up, and for all your ailments, here's Doc Smith's liniment. Put it on and it'll all feel better. That's what Biden's doing. Give them the money and everything will be okay. But so the timing, we know that this is a political assessment. Now, I haven't gone to the obvious conclusion of a politicized assessment, but we can admit right up front, this is a political assessment. It's been released by the executive branch, which is the ones authorized to make this happen, to Congress, the legislative branch, for a political purpose, to create the conditions for the freeing of $60 billion. So it's a political assessment. Now let's look at the assessment itself. I will just say, to cut to the chase here, there's not a military professional, and I have to underscore the term professional, who believes this assessment. It's just ludicrous in the extreme. It's stupid. It's so stupid as to be insulting. The probability of kill factors alone. I mean, how do you kill a Russian soldier? Let's just get into that. How does it happen? Because especially when the Russians are trying to kill you at the same time. So you bring up artillery. I want to fire an artillery shell downrange because artillery is the number one killer on the battlefield right now. Fire a round downrange, bam, and kill me some Russians. Meanwhile, the Russians, for every round I'm firing downrange at them, are firing, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds at me. Now, we can just go ahead and give ourselves credit for having really good artillery. I mean, we'll call them magic artillery shells. Every time we fire a round, it goes downrange and it kills something. It doesn't. Usually you fire a lot of artillery shells to kill something, but we'll just give them credit for magic artillery shells. Fire, kill. Let's say you fire and you kill one of theirs. Okay, bam, boom. Oh no, now they only have 7 artillery rounds back. They fire 7 at us. One of them's going to hit me and kill me. So I'm dead now. And that's going to be replicated down the whole battle. Just the ability to mass fires alone puts the probability of kill correlation overwhelmingly on the side of the Russians. So the Russians are positioned just by the superiority of their sizes and numbers to kill more Ukrainians than the Ukrainians are positioned to kill us. And we can take this to every extreme you want, but it even gets better because the Ukrainian Air Force is virtually non-existent. They pop up a couple airplanes here now and then. They fire some bombs and all of a sudden they kill Russians. Of course they kill Russians, but the Russian Air Force is everywhere, slaughtering the Ukrainians, slaughtering them. And it just goes on and on and on and on. The Russians are on the defensive. Now that's important because normally when you attack, you want a 3-to-1 advantage when you go forward to the attack because the advantage is normally with the defender. So you need more attackers than defenders. So you'd expect the Ukrainians to be losing more. And that's if everything's going well. But the Ukrainians have admitted that nothing went well on this counteroffensive. Everything went wrong. Minefields, they got bogged down. So all the things on the battlefield that are supposed to be killing Russians ain't killing Russians. They're being killed by Russians. What I'm trying to say is this is impossible, what they're saying. It's a literal physical impossibility to have what they say happened to the Russians. It hasn't happened. It's the evidence is overwhelming that this is a BS made up assessment. Now, how would this happen? Well, gosh, I don't know. First of all, is it possible that U.S. intelligence could be politicized like this? I don't know, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Don't we remember when a president, George W. Bush, through his administration, gave the U.S. intelligence community the orders to fix the intelligence around the policy, meaning we want to invade Iraq. We're going to use as the excuse weapons of mass destruction. Find me some weapons, baby. And the U.S. intelligence community went, oh, yeah, sure. What the hell? We'll look at everything and go, oh, that looks like a weapon. That could be 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 a weapon. Here, we have weapons. There weren't any weapons. And they knew there weren't any weapons, but they were fixing the intelligence, cherry picking this data, this data, this data, this data, this data. When you do battle damage assessment, I have a little bit of experience in this. Let me give you an example of how that battle damage can be spun in a way that isn't a bold-faced lie. Because I'd like to believe that while intelligence can be politicized, that your basic analyst isn't an inherent liar. But what they do want to do is please the boss. Now, during the Gulf War, the one that I was involved in, one aspect that I was involved in was counter-Scud operations. That means that we're looking for the Iraqi Scud missile launchers, mobile missile launchers, before they fire their missiles at Israel or at the Gulf Arab states, and then we want to destroy them. And somewhere around week 2 of the air war, I noticed something because the intelligence said that the Iraqis had 19 mobile launchers. That was the pre-war intelligence, pretty accurate because they had 19. Wow. So, and week 2, I'm going through all the battle damage reports of pilots who were flying over Iraq at great risk. Some of them are shot down, so, some are killed, made prisoner. These it's a war. These aren't cowards. They're out there trying to do a job, and they've reported they've killed 64 mobile missile launchers. And I'm like, can't be. Physically can't be. 19. If you've killed all 19, that would be 19, but you've killed 64. But they're still firing them. Missiles are being fired 6 at a time, 5 at a time. So that implies if they're firing 6 at a time and you've killed 64, there must have been 70 launchers, but there's no evidence of this. Even if we give them credit for having an indigenous launcher program, that would be another 10, a dozen launchers, not 64. So something's going on. We're hitting something that we think is a missile launcher, but it ain't a missile launcher. That happens all the time. Pilot reports are notoriously inflated. The same thing with you're firing artillery downrange. I mean, do you really have eyes on target? No. You might have a drone up there. And so you see 10 guys running and you fire artillery rounds. It goes boom, 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 boom. And 10 guys aren't running. We killed all 10. No, they're on the ground, down, moving, not being killed. You didn't kill anybody. That's the reality. So, but these reports are coming in that are inflated. They're inflated by people who think they did something. So now the Ukrainians are out there and they're submitting their reports. Or you have guys on satellites who are counting things. And one of the things we did in the war is because you can't count everybody because it's impossible. What you do is you say, if we drop, say, for every 1 ton of bombs we drop, we assume that we killed X number of troops and X number of tanks. So now it becomes, a simple mathematical problem. How many artillery shells did you fire? We fired 7,000. What's the table say? We should have killed, 400 men and 20 tanks. Fired 7,000 rounds, killed 400 men, 70 tanks. Goes down, boom, boom. Also, all this data is out there. It's crap data. It's BS. And now you have an analyst who knows it's crap data. It's BS. But the boss says, we need to show that the money we're sending to Ukraine is resulting in dead Russians. So the analyst goes through and he says, well, if I cherry pick all the intelligence reports that say we killed all this stuff, wow, we have an 87% success rate. We've killed 87% of the Russian army. We're really good. No, we're really bad. And this is the fact. The Russians, let me say it this way. The Russians started the conflict with around 220,000 troops in the general area going into Ukraine. Since that time, they've mobilized 300,000 and they've received around 450,000 volunteers. So that's 750 plus 2, about 950,000 troops. Of this 950,000 troops that have been employed in the zone, you have some rotation as well. Some conscripts that are rotating in, some contract soldiers that are coming in from everywhere. About 1.2 million Russians have rotated through and are serving in the special military operation zone. Of this, we can say that the number of dead is around 50,000 dead. That's a fair assessment. And the number of wounded is around 150,000. So that's 200,000 out of 1.2 million. That's a lot of guys, first of all. Let's understand it, that the idea that Russia's not taking losses, not taking hits on this one is absurd in the extreme. This is a very, very bloody war. 50,000 dead, 150,000 wounded is a fair assessment. I would call it a liberal assessment, meaning that I'm giving the Ukrainians more credit than maybe they deserve. The number could be less, but it's not going to be more than this. So that's a fair number. Now, when they say 87%, they're talking about casualties. They're talking about dead and wounded. So their numbers, what that would put it at 87% of 320,000. So they're talking about a roughly, I'm not a good mathematician, but around 300,000. So to be frank, their numbers are off by about 100,000. That shows you, how intelligence can be inflated here, there, and everything. 100,000, but that's not the point. They're saying of the original forces in. I'm giving you numbers that include the Donetsk militia, the Lugansk militia, Wagner, volunteer units that fall out, units belonging to the Ministry of Interior or the Russian National Guard, units that fall outside of the Ministry of Defense, the Russian army per se. I'm giving you total figures. What they're talking about is of the Russian army, the 300 and some odd thousand that were available at the time. Those are the casualties. So their numbers are highly inflated with a very select, pool of data. I'm going expansive data, everything, and the numbers are there. So you can't directly correlate these numbers. On tanks, understand this. You can take a tank out, but if you don't remove that tank and give it to the Ukrainians, what tends to happen is the Russians recover the carcass and repair it and put it back in. They have these repair and restoration units right there at the battlefield that are taking these things in. If they can repair them right there, they do, and they're very effective. They'll get a destroyed tank in there, and they will replace an engine. They will replace a sprocket. They will do what they need to do, rewire it, and bam, it's back out into the battlefield to be used again. Tanks that are really badly destroyed go back to the manufacturer where they remanufacture it. And I've seen the photographs of the tanks coming in, and I've seen the photographs of the tanks coming out. The tanks coming out look like they're brand new tanks off the off the assembly line. So is it possible that the Russians lost 2,000 tanks? Yeah, it's possible. This is a war. This is a modern war. Is it possible they lost 2,000 tanks irretrievably? Hell no. Of those 2,000 tanks they lost, the vast majority of those tanks, and I would say over 1,500, 1,700, had been repaired and put back into combat. And in addition to that happening, Russia has been manufacturing brand new tanks. So the notion that Russia's running out of tanks is stupid. Again, the ignorance of this intelligence assessment, where I can't accuse the analyst of making up a report. What I can accuse him of, and I am, and I'm accusing his mid-level management and the senior level management, is knowing that the numbers they're putting there are not good numbers, that it's cherry-picked, which makes this a fabricated intelligence report, not worth the paper it's written on. But it was done specifically to give to Congress so that Congress could leak it to CNN. Remember, early on in the war, where we had the head of the National Security Agency say, yeah, we're releasing intelligence straight to CNN so we can manipulate public opinion. Jake Sullivan bragged, yeah, we're declassifying intelligence so it can get out there. Even if we know it's wrong, we're doing it because we want to shape public opinion. It's part of the war effort. So that's what's happening here. This intelligence report was written for the purpose of being released to influence public opinion so that we can make phone calls to our congressmen so that they will release $60 billion. And if the idea of the U.S. intelligence community lying directly to the American people, that is lying to our representatives for the purpose of them deceiving us, doesn't upset you, I don't think anything will, because that's what this is. This is a bald-faced lie by the U.S. intelligence community on behalf of the President of the United States to Congress to deceive the American people so that we can greenlight Congress releasing $60 billion to Ukraine.
Indeed. And I'm just wondering about the effectiveness of this, because you mentioned that, this is on behalf of the Biden administration, of Joe Biden. This is an attempt to sell the war, to ensure that this huge amount of money going to pour in. But then you also have the fact, like here, during Zelensky's visit, even Joe Biden, well, we know that Joe Biden has a lot of troubles when it comes to saying the right thing or keeping it together. But even here, you see this kind of comports with what's been going on over the last several months in the Western mainstream media, the US mainstream media, and the entire political class in Washington. A lot of them have been saying things aren't really going well, perhaps, and that's why there's this gridlock on the money. But even Joe Biden couldn't help but say a shift in the rhetoric where instead of as long as it takes, supporting Ukraine as long as it takes, now he's saying as long as we can. That's quite the change. And I wonder if you'd like to comment on that and what is precipitating this contradiction between trying to sell this war as a huge success in some respects, while on the other hand, continuing to indicate that it's far from it.
Well, I think one of the things that's happening too is there's this political gamesmanship being played by Biden, trying to shame Congress into releasing this money. Because I mean, there is a difference, I would think, between we're with you till the end, and suddenly it's, well, we're with you as long as we can be with you, but we're not with you till the end. The end might be tomorrow because Congress is not releasing the money. So this is part of the political gamesmanship being played by the president to create the concept of the inevitability of disaster. It should Congress not release this money. So the president is just saying we're with you as long as we can be, but my hands are tied because Congress isn't releasing this money. This is also part of the Biden administration's political posturing. We're in the presidential silly season right now. We are less than a year away from the great 2024 election. And so it's just going to get silly, as it always does. But here it's going to get even more silly because of the deep political divides that exist in the United States between Republicans and Democrats. Biden has tied his horse to, the Ukraine wagon. And he's supposed to be along for the ride. We just found out that he's not. He's going to cut that horse loose as soon as he can. But how does he explain this to the American people? He's already going to have to explain that. Oh, no, he's not going to have to explain Afghanistan. I'm sorry, because nobody cares about Afghanistan. Nobody's talking about Afghanistan. Everybody's forgotten about Afghanistan. Literally, everybody's forgotten that in August of 2021, America got its butt kicked by a bunch of Taliban that we thought we had defeated, who had come back and they threw us out of Afghanistan. That's supposed to be the kind of disaster that causes, presidencies to collapse, to fail. But no, he got us right back into another adventure in Ukraine. And now that's collapsing and failing. I mean, the American people apparently have no memory. We have no conscience. We don't stand for anything. We're easily fooled because what Biden's seeking to do right now is to get us all to forget that he once said, we're with you till the end, that this is about American freedom. This is about democracy. This is about defending our way of life. This is an existential struggle. If we let Putin win, it's all over, guys. And now, well, guess what? Putin won. It's all over. But it's not my fault. It was Congress's fault. They didn't release the $60 billion. Had they simply done what I asked them to do, we wouldn't be in this problem. But it's not a big deal anyways, because it's just Ukraine. It's not a big deal. It's just Ukraine. Don't worry about it. We've got NATO, our God-given right. It's a sacred obligation to defend NATO. But, don't worry about Ukraine. We're just, what, Ukraine? Where is that on the map? Why are you saying Ukraine? Afghanistan? We don't know. That's what's going on right now. We're starting to create the conditions where the president is trying to de-link his administration from this problem that he created.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.